How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Free Kick, the AFLW podcast. In today's pre-season episode, we will be chatting through the rucks and having a look at some of the potential ruck options for your starting squad and throughout the season at lots of different price points. Today, I'm joined by everyone, which is nice. How's it going, Liam?
Oh, I am delightful. I really thought you were going to go the extended pause, no throw, and then pick a name. I'm going delightfully. Thank you.
It's really nice to have all of us on an episode for once. I think this is only, the second time this preseason it's happened?
Yeah, we had exciting. The launch.
Yeah.
And now.
It's very fun.
Great, so we can all talk over each other. It's going to be fantastic.
Please, I would never do that. The cool, calm and collected Liam, he does not get involved in fights.
You're banned from calling yourself that, though.
Why? What have I done?
You haven't breached it. I just had to edit the launch episode, and listen to that about 5,000 times. Anyway, moving on to the rucks.
Anything to make your editing experience more entertaining, I'll do it. Not easier. I did not say easier.
Yes, entertaining for sure. Well, speaking of entertaining, we've got the rucks. Now, last year we had a field day at this point in the preseason because we had three rookie rucks to choose from. All of them turned out to be pretty decent. Most of us had two of them. Some of us had three of them. But this point in the preseason for season 9, we've got less rookie options, and the rucks are looking a little bit trickier given some of the preseason movements, but also a bit more interesting. Got some interesting contenders for underpriced premiums. So, without further ado, Will, why don't you run us through Ado? I'm going to edit that.
Ado.
Without further ado, Will, why don't you run us through some of the premium rucks that we think are going to be finishing top of their line at the end of the season?
Yep, for sure. And so starting off, we got the difference for those of us who listened to us last year. Ali Morfitt, one of my superstars from last year. Highest priced ruck, averaged 87.9. Was a really fantastic option last year, really jumped up in price and had a fantastic year, All-Australian ruck. So if you want to go right to the top, Ali Morfitt's your option. Number 2, we've got Alice Edmonds from the Bulldogs, averages just a shade above 80 and is priced at around about that million mark, so quite a bit cheaper than Ali Morfitt by about 100k, which is a considerable amount. And at number 3, we've got Freo's Mim Strom, who was just slightly below Alice Edmonds, who averaged 79. So some really good options there. There's a few others to consider. Sabrina Frederick had a really good year last year. Matilda Scholes, Brown Moody. There's plenty of ruck options there, but those are probably the big 3.
Will, I don't know if you've done this intentionally with these rankings, but did you put Ali Morfitt first so that you would get to talk about the fact that you owned her after round 2, and you've thrown Matilda Scholes as the last name to discuss because you got you got Ali because you didn't bring in Matilda at Schultz to start the year?
I would never do such things, Liam. But I think Matilda Scholes is a really great option personally.
I would never do that, but it's really convenient that it's worked out that way.
Yeah, it really has.
I just wanted to talk about Ali Morfitt. I still think there's some value.
Well, in that case.
Yeah, Morfitt has some great value this year, if only because she had kind of, I would say, 2 games at the back end of her season where she was to some degree of injured. She's only 20 years old. Like that, her season was a standout. Like if we did not have Laura Gardner, I would have said she was the breakout of 2023, both from real football terms and then also fantasy terms. It's not very frequently that you get such a physically dominant player at 20 who still probably has a lot of polish left to go in her game. She's got all the physical tools, but she gives away a lot of free kicks. Her kicking is extremely wayward, and there are often times where her tendency is just to kick big and kick long. She's great for her kicking numbers, but I think that her precision by hand and by foot will over time lead to more points being accumulated around her. I do not have any discomfort in saying that she could easily average over 90 this year.
Wow, that's ominous. That's really ominous to see.
Yeah, and unfortunately won't be my difference this year because I don't quite get the benefit of the massive price jump, but a fantastic option nonetheless.
I have to say, when I was thinking of where this list would go, I really thought Alice Edmonds was going to be number one. I see serious upside there.
You say you see Alice Edmonds as number one. You're surprised you didn't go there. That's because you gave your rankings in our Western Bulldogs episode and you said Alice Edmonds was going to be number one.
Yeah, and yet Will didn't listen, did he?
Would you like to tell us why then, Jono?
So I think the exciting thing with Alice Edmonds, as far as I can tell, is that there is now no Celine Moody. And it's not as if Celine Moody is taking so many minutes last year. It's more just whenever the ball was in the forward line, that's when she would be taking some of the ruck opportunities. And also in the games that Moody missed last year, those were games that Edmonds was getting, 95+% time on ground, and she was putting up noticeably higher scores. I don't know if she's going to go 90+, but if Ali Morfitt can hold that, then I can see Edmonds jumping up and getting close to the 90 figure.
Yeah, I think that there's upside from a football sense. I think that having no Moody there is very helpful. My cause for alarm on a team building level is that in this most recent off-season, for whatever reason, I cannot fathom why, the Western Bulldogs decided they would offer a near max length mega contract to Ali Morfitt, despite the fact that I would say that Edmonds was their second player on the team sheet behind Ellie Blackburn. That was incredibly shocking to me and speaks to maybe there being a degree of uncertainty around Edmonds' spot on the team sheet each week, noting that Georgia Borg, who was an injury replacement player off the kind of as a train on, basically, because there's so many injuries at the Bulldogs, played one game at the back end of last year, is a mature age AFLW player, and then was drafted by the Western Bulldogs as their last draft pick, is the other ruck on the list. I'm not predicting straight up that she'll get replaced by effectively a rookie, but I just thought it'd be worthwhile noting that I have concerns about her role or the position of the Western Bulldogs about her role there long term.
Yeah, look, I'm going to be redrafting a keeper league soon, and I absolutely will not be taking Alice Edmonds. But for this season, I'm still pretty hopeful. Yeah. How about yourself, Mel? You're a Fremantle fan. Are you excited to see Mim Strom on this list?
I am, and I'm also excited to talk about Mim Strom. As usual. No, I think she's a really good contender for this top premium spot. And like Freo definitely has some uncertainty going on with their side, but she's got the double whammy of, we know that we love to see it when our players get tackles because that's a great way to score goals. Score points. That's a great way to score points.
It is a great way to score goals.
It is a great way to score goals. The posts. But with the outs of Bowers and Stunnett in there, there's tackling to go around. And in terms of the Freo's highest tacklers last season, it was obviously Bowers and Stunnett up the top. And then we had Megan Kaufman and Mim Strom. So she's got the skills already. She can just up her game and get us some more points that way. But also, Freo have removed their kind of other options for ruck, which she already had the primary ruck role last season, but there was a little bit of division across the second ruck there, Ariana Hetherington, who does remain, but only played 4 games last season. And then they've delisted their third highest hit-out ruck, Sarah Wilstra. We don't expect Anya Tighe to be playing much in the ruck role, if possible. And then they traded Roxy Rue, and they also delisted their other untried ruck in Emily Fiedler. So it's her role to have. And I think the risk, I'm not expecting her to be a nice consistent scorer throughout the season, but I think she's going to end up there with those high averages, especially from the tackle points.
Oh, I fully buy all of this analysis. I felt and said very similar things when we did the Fremantle episode. I think Mim Strom is very consistent. If I can say one thing that I have thought about subsequent to the consistency argument is, do we think that Anya Tighe may spend more time in the ruck this year with the arrival of Gabby Newton, who is able to play as that high half-forward, large marking target, playing in that mobile Bonnie Toogood type of role, allowing Onya's athleticism to shine in the CBAs. I'm not predicting it per se, but it's like, okay, they have not many rucks left. How are they going to fill it? Is it just Mim Stromps for the taking, and will Onya feature there, is my thought.
Yeah, I feel like Onya has shown that she can really play anywhere, but I think that given she's the leading goal kicker, she'll probably stay forward, and that Ariana Hetherington, as the kind of shown second ruck from last season, will keep that. It's only really if something happens to either one of those. I do see it as a flag because Onya Tighe was like the 4th highest hit-out scorer, and she's still running around there doing her good old things, but I don't think it diminishes Mim's Drom from being a top ruck, and she's a little bit cheaper than some of these other ones that we think are going to finish there, so I think she's a nice risky option.
Yeah. I do think I've talked a lot about how Freo are going to have all these experiments this year, because I think they're just going to be throwing people around, seeing what works. But I think this is one where you could potentially say, there's one too many experiments. If you're experimenting with who else is at the stoppage, sometimes you want a consistent ruck. So I would have thought maybe later in the season, if they've sort of settled on a mix, maybe then they'll start going the other way. I'm not sure.
You're presuming rationality when it comes to the in-game personnel decisions from Fremantle, which, if anything, last year told us that is not something you can expect regularly.
I mean, anyone who doesn't put Hayley Miller right next to the ball at all times is kidding themselves. But I also don't follow Fremantle that closely, so I'll defer to Mel on that one.
But I think Sabrina Frederick's another player that kind of has that Onya Tighe-ish model who can go ruck. And, I mean, Onya Tighe was predominantly in the ruck a few seasons ago and then swapped between tall forward and tall back. Sabrina Frederick is someone that we saw in the ruck play very high time on ground because then she'd just run to whichever other side needed her the most. Barely took any breaks at all. But I think that she's probably, while she finished in the top 5 or so last season, she's probably not as exciting as an option because I don't think she'll need to be running around everywhere doing all of the roles like she did last season. And if we go back to just purely hit-outs, like even though she had a great jump in her hit-outs last season, I think she might be maybe not quite in this bucket by the end of the season. What do you guys think?
I think Sabrina Frederick's an interesting one because she definitely overperformed, I suppose, last year. She had a fantastic year. They haven't really brought any more rucks onto their list. Erica Fowler is probably the only other recognised ruck that they've really got. And Imogen Barnett, who spent a bit of time in the ruck, also might be required a bit more up forward given the injury to Nell Morris-Dalton. So I think with Sabrina Frederick, I can't see her gaining too many points, but I do think she'll probably stay reasonably high, probably not in the same bracket as the others that we've talked about, but I don't think that the drop-off is going to be that drastic.
Can I just say, we've been on this episode for nearly 15 minutes now, and we are yet to talk about Brianne Moody in any sort of depth. Is that a record for the ruck line?
Probably. I reckon it definitely is, because Carlton have 3 premium rucks on their list. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And they play all 3.
Well, we expect they're going to play all 3.
We cannot call Celine Moody a premium. We
cannot call this isn't in terms of fantasy. This isn't in terms of fantasy. This is just in terms of the quality of them as rucks. Because all 3 of them would probably be the number 1 ruck.
She wants to be a forward. Celine Moody wanted to be a forward.
Look, she plays as a forward. She wants to be a forward. In her heart, she's a premium ruck. That's how I see it.
All 3 of those players would be the number 1 ruck at many other clubs.
Yeah, except they're all
I'll grant you that.
Yeah, I can't in good faith pick Brianne Moody this year just because if you've got Celine Moody probably playing out full forward, that still leaves her going with Jess Good, and with Brianne Moody is probably going to be cutting that time once again, and I'm not sure that's 100% what I'd be doing in terms of picking my ruck.
I'm not touching Carltoners with a 10-foot pole unless something miraculous happens and we hear guaranteed, one person in one spot. Otherwise, it's let that happen. And if we were doing draft, it would be like, I'm going to let someone else draft that problem.
Yeah, this is to me, even if we did get the words for it, I think I just need to see it happen. I couldn't do it round one.
So that's quite a good look at the premiums or who we think is going to end up there. And I'm sensing a little bit of overlap here because we think Matilda Schultz has the potential to end up in the top 5 or so at the end of the season. But she's also someone that we think is potentially an underpriced premium. Will, where do you think the value is coming from?
I see Matilda Scholes as very similar to Ali Morfitt. Both of them played a very similar sort of game where they tackled, they got involved in the play, and both of them gave away a lot of free kicks, which probably limited their scoring, ironically. But Matilda Schultz averaged 75 in her first year, and she's still, 20 years old. I think much like Ali Morfitt, there's a lot of improvement there. I think if you are looking to go a higher price ruck, Matilda Scholes isn't a bad option. I mean, there's only 4 points worth of average difference between her and going up to, say, a Mim Strom, but you're saving 50k. So I think there's definitely scope for her to be in the conversation around that top 3 at the end of the year. I also think that she's a player that has a very guaranteed role, not dissimilar to a Mim Strom, where she doesn't really have that much ruck competition at Port Adelaide. They've got a few players that have rucked with her, Liv Levicki being the main one, but she's usually going to be that number 1 ruck. And I think that there is scope for her to push up above an 80 average this year.
I think that the concern that I have with Matilda Schultz is her run to start the year. Even across the first 5 rounds, she has 3 of the worst 6 matchups and 5 total bad matchups across that time. So she starts with Adelaide, which is the toughest ruck matchup in the competition. She had a 70 against them last year. She then hits Alice Edmonds and then goes up against Kim Rennie and Emma King in round 4, and then also hits Carlton and Richmond in her double game week in round 5. I think that as much as I see some potential for improvement from Matilda Schultz, I think that I'd be concerned with starting her to begin the year. I'd be waiting for a price dip and then looking to upgrade or downgrade to her or sideways.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those ones where it's a shame the season isn't longer, because with that stretch at the start, she could lose a fair bit of money and you could be looking at a real bargain later in the year. So yeah, she could be a post buy rounds play for people who want to maybe move up. If you're going for a rookie strategy, she could be, having dropped a fair bit of money, someone that you can jump on to get a really nice boost in scores towards the end of the year.
Gosh, Richmond and Carlton in 1 week. That is a question mark against who she's rucking against twice. Twice in 1 week. So that's, I like the idea of the post-buy rounds pick up there. And Liam, like Talia Hickey is someone you've got down here. I was surprised to see this name. This is, maybe I just haven't thought much about Richmond, but give me the pitch.
Well, it's a good thing you haven't thought about Richmond because she plays for Brisbane.
Yep, tell me about Brisbane.
It's good to see you're not wasting your time thinking about the wrong team for a player. That's very important.
I'm just really efficient like that.
So, Talia Hickey, I think this is one that is a question not of, I have a narrative to spin for this moment, this specific season. Talia Hickey is the player to pick. I think what I have is Talia Hickey is extremely naturally gifted, probably one of the most natural athletes when the ball hits the ground of the ruck department. I'm not like, you've got the Moody's who are extremely fast. Hickey is great in the air, great when the ball hits the ground. The problem that we've had so far is she's basically just been a 65 averaging player, and we've not seen that explosion. I think I've seen games where she has been extremely dominant, and I think that at some point she will be a premium ruck. I'm just putting her name down because if we get to round 4 and it's like Talia Hickey is top 3 averaging ruck, I'm going to be pleasantly surprised, but I'm not going to be out and out shocked. I think that athleticism really shines, and if you were going to project kind of what the ideal ruck might look like in 5 years, I would hazard a guess that Talia Hickey would be top 3.
Makes sense. Keeper league potential.
extremely high keeper league potential. And I just also don't think that there's that much competition. I think that the thing that holds her back from time to time is Brisbane's game style definitely is predicated off extremely fast ball movement. They have the best wings in the competition. It's both extremely fast ball movement horizontally on the ground, but then even from stoppage, Svark and Dawes are in and under players who look to move the ball laterally to those wings. And also Ali Anderson is an elite inside and outside player. That does limit the number of repeat stoppages where someone like Hickey could score more. If we do see a shift in that game style, I think Hickey is prime in line to up her scoring in the season that does happen. I just don't know if it's going to be this year. I needed to put her name on a list somewhere because she's just like too good not to talk about.
Yeah, I think I have a similar logic, if I'm honest, about Lucy Wales, where I think there's a real upside to getting her, but there's one very, very big drawback. The big upside, I think, is that she's now going into this season as Hawthorn's real only ruck on the list. We have some backup in Jess Vukic that we'll talk about a little bit later, but I think realistically we know she's going into round one as the Hawks' sole ruck, which last season with Tamara Luke on the list, she wasn't. But, if you look at what she can do because of that, she's going from 70% time on ground up to what's probably going to be in the low 90s, I would guess. And, she sort of got close to that at the end of last season when Tamara Luke was injured, and she put up an 89 against Port Adelaide. She put up a 71 against Geelong to sort of close out the Hawks season. There's just one really, really annoying issue, and it's that in the first 3 rounds, her ruck matchups are the Triple Towers of Carlton, Sabrina Frederick, and then the Crows with Allen. So it's a very, very challenging start. I see upside, and I would so love to jump on, but it's more of a keeper pick again.
The thing that I do like about Lucy Wales, though, is that, even listening to the interview, she's had all kind of off-season and pre-season to be mentally in the state of coming in as solo ruck, essentially, with Tamara Luke's departing, but still only having been there for a couple of years, still recognising that she's quite young and a bit to learn. So I think that even though that's kind of a bit daunting for her, I think that could really help with, it's not just a getting thrown in there after an injury or someone. She could, if she's in the right space, she could really come in and dominate the season, knowing it's hers for the taking.
I definitely think as well there's a case to be made that if Lucy can do what Steph Wales managed to do last year, so her identical twin sister, in a team where she was the sole ruck, they play very similarly. They have great marking hands. I think that Lucy was definitely backed by the game plan at Hawthorn, which was not predicated on having the ball themselves. It was about tackling the opposition with ball in hand, and I would say that they lacked a certain deft touch when transitioning out of defence, and that's always going to impact players who need marks to score. And I think Lucy Wales is impacted by that. So I think even if it was just a shift to a more, let's call it standard game plan, I think that there's 5 points of upside on a 65. Taking her, that's probably about, let's say it a 60 to 80K. It's just, with that run to start with, I agree. It's really awful timing for starting the season with her. If it was the inverse and that was her final few games, I think it'd be a far more popular play.
Yeah, I think it's the sort of pick where if you ride her for those 3 weeks, after that it really opens up. She's got 5 games in a row, which are very, very favourable on the whole. It's just getting there.
Mel's got her thinking face on.
Yeah, I'm wondering, do we want to talk about Jessie Wardlaw first?
Yeah, we can talk about Jessie Wardlaw.
I think we should. I think it's interesting that we've got Jessie Wardlaw, who we are pretty confident is not going to play in the ruck, but she's listed as ruck status from last season. And so my question is, would you rather have Jess Wardlaw playing as a forward in your team or Jess Wardlaw as a ruck?
I picked up Jess Wardlaw as a ruck last year, and it didn't do me great, to be completely honest. Look, I think I love Jessie Wardlaw as a player. I think she's fantastic, but the fact that she's going to be thrown around a bit doesn't fill me with huge confidence, to be completely honest. and as such, I would probably avoid.
I do believe that the words "don't give me much confidence" and St Kilda go together like PB&J.
It's an interesting thought puzzle, though, because, we want people that are running through the midfield that are listed as other positions. But to think, do we actually want a forward in our ruck, listed as a ruck role? I'm not sure that we do.
Yeah. No, look, I see it. I hear you. I just thought it was interesting we had someone playing out of position because you don't often see people with ruck status that aren't playing there. Although I guess we've got one more potential coming up, which we haven't talked about, but there's a chance that someone at Richmond is moving to half-back.
Yeah, there's a interesting kind of dynamic going on with Richmond here in that old friend of the pod, Gab Seymour, was kind of high averaging ruck under kind of in that underpriced premium, top premium a few seasons ago. She's not been super relevant this last season. She's kind of coming into season 9 averaged at 66 or so. But having a bit of read of some preseason content, sounds like she's might be moving into more of a tall utility role, possibly going back a bit, which brings up the exciting opportunity that the ruck that Richmond have just brought in, Montana McKinnon, could actually be taking over that primary ruck role. And she's a really interesting one because she didn't really get the limelight when she was playing at Adelaide. But there was one game in round 10 where she kind of had the primary ruck role and Jess Allen kind of had the secondary ruck role more so in that game. And she averaged 89, which is pretty good. And given that she's priced at 51, if she's got a 90 potential in her while playing with another ruck as well, she's kind of like a mid-value option that could move up. I think she makes her in a tricky price position, but I think where Gab Seymour starts and whether or not we see the primary ruck role shift hands could be really interesting because the other ruck options at Richmond don't seem to be that dominant either.
I'm pretty excited. I've had a couple iterations of my team where McKinnon was the primary ruck. I think if she gets that role, I don't think there's any team in the competition that has a better fixture to start those first 3 weeks. I mean, West Coasts have changed their rucks a lot. GWS have changed their rucks a lot. And Ali Morfitt, for some reason, whilst phenomenal herself, she does give up points. So I can't really explain that. But it's a pretty handy run to start. So I think if that role is there, I'm pretty likely to jump on board.
I think it's Montana McKinnon's points per minute scoring that I really love too. It's the fact that for so long she's just been playing 50-55% time on ground, but still with the points per minute of a top 5 to 7 ruck. And like Mel said, in games where Jess Allen doesn't play, she puts 30, 40 points on her average for games that she's not, that Jess, that she's trying to do dual ruck with Jess Allen. I think combine those two things and reading the tea leaves, it's not even just so much that Montana McKinnon's bought in, it's that Poppy Kelly really fell out of favour towards the back end of last year. And I think that's in part because she couldn't do things around the ground that they wanted, that they didn't already get from Gabby Seymour. And Gabby Seymour had one game solely in defensive last year where she locked down on Body Too Good, which how many times did that happen last year? I'll wait. I'm still waiting. Maybe against Geelong in the final. That's about it. I think I've also had many iterations with Montana McKinnon as my ruck because I think that of this, and she sits below underpriced premiums, but she's not super cheap, ridiculous value. It's an awkward price point, I know, but she's probably one of the only options that we've ever had there.
It does make it additionally risky though, because if you pick a rookie, they can't really go down that far if they don't play, they have a bad game. Where you pick a mid-price in your ruck and they don't perform, your options are your other mid-prices who might have gone up in price or down to the slim pickings of rookies we have at the bottom. So while tempting, probably the riskiest player that you could put in your team.
Yeah, and Jono and I can attest to this because we picked a player at price similarly in season 7 and it failed spectacularly when she didn't get the role, when she was also playing a split ruck role. Who was that, Jono? I can't remember her name. It's completely blank from my head.
Yeah, she was probably one of the Moodies, just
probably one of them.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
We probably went
was
the really successful high scoring one, I assume.
Yes,
so
it was
let's
definitely
just leave it at that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Obviously. But I mean, if you do go this path and it unfortunately doesn't eventuate for you, you're going to need to have some other mid-value options that you can be picking from. So who else do we have in the same kind of bracket?
I can just jump straight in and say, well, Jess Allen, Montana McKinnon leaving opens up, and it was actually hilarious. Like both of them, when they rucked by themselves, elite points per minute scorers. It's hard to find a duo
it's just
that is
the combo.
that's better equipped to like score on a points per minute basis. So Montana McKinnon in the side, Jess Allen averages 48.9. Without her in there, that's a 72.3. That puts her less than 7 points on average below what we see as top 3 in the line. And for last year, that's 3 points below a top 5 to 6 ruck. I think that there are fewer question marks on Jess Allen and her potential role at Adelaide. It's just for her going to be, she's never been a particularly high time on ground player, but this time at 2 separate clubs. But she comes in with a lot of draft pedigree for when she first came into the AFLW. So as much as we're talking a lot about Richmond, I think the same kind of analysis applies to what's happening at Adelaide.
I've also not thought too much about Adelaide. Who do you think she would be sharing that role with, or would she rather be taking more time on ground in an unusual move?
I would have said that Caitlin Gould would be the next potential ruck option. But to be perfectly honest, I'm not entirely sure because I can't imagine that Adelaide are keen to pull Gould out of a forward role where she's played very, very well now for 2 seasons. It's not a it's why I'm like, with Richmond, I know what the trade up is, right? Like it's McKinnon, where do they play Seymour? Does Poppy Kelly ever get picked? With Adelaide, it's like, okay, maybe they're bringing in a rookie. Maybe they're turning a taller defender into a backup ruck. But at this stage in the preseason, I don't know, and I need to see it. But I think that if we spend too much time, like I've talked a lot about Richmond, I've thought a lot about Richmond, but I think we probably should also be thinking a lot about what's happening with Jess Allen at Adelaide.
And if she gets 100% time on ground in the preseason games, then woo.
If she gets 100% time on ground, I'm going to be shocked. If I would take like 80.
True. Ration it down.
One that I'm really keen to hear about is Fleur Davies, because when you showed me your first iteration of your team, this is who you had as your ruck. You've got to justify it to me.
Fleur Davies, I think a lot of people really expected her to come good as a rookie ruck last season. It didn't quite eventuate. She averaged just under 40. She's a really talented player, and I think a player that a lot of people think can become a bit of an Ellie Morford type, one of those rucks that, really influences at the contest. She's big and she's strong. And it didn't really eventuate, as I said. So much so that Renee Karras ended up doing a lot of the rucking towards the end of last year for GWS. And Renee Karras is now at St Kilda. So it'll be interesting to see whether having a bit more full-time in the ruck can allow Fleur Davies to jump up. I think it's something that'll be interesting to see over the preseason, whether she does get, that 100% ruck time and is able to actually score those points. Because if so, I think she can be a bargain, but I will say I have since made that change out from my team.
Yeah, I'd be worried about someone like Cambridge McCormack starting to ruck share again.
Well, Jono, you've clearly been away from fantasy for a season because it's Cambridge McCormick, and I would be surprised if she's going to become a ruck again, given she's mainly been a defender, and GWS did lose a couple of key taller defenders or key, core parts of their defense in the off season.
I definitely had seen that role mispronunciation of her name aside.
Yes, my apologies.
Yeah.
I felt I couldn't resist.
I would have thought that, if you're down to just the one ruck and it's a ruck that doesn't play a lot of time on field, that you would have had a backup there. I appreciate that we're going to be talking about one a little bit later in the program, but I would have thought there's a chance.
It's a possibility.
At the very least, there's a sharing role.
Can I just say, in terms of Fleur Davis, I think that the kind of bill of goods that was described when she was drafted probably hasn't eventuated to date. I haven't seen the work around the ground, and I haven't seen the skills in possession, particularly at stoppage. I think I see the makings of a good tap ruck there. I don't know if I see the foundations of a good fantasy scorer in Fleur Davis.
You've obviously been away from AFLW Fantasy for too long because it's actually Fleur Davies.
No, it's not. It's Fleur Davis. I will put $100 on this. They're the Davises. I know it looks like it should be pronounced Davies, but it's Davis. It's dumb, but I'm correct.
She's got her name wrong. But carry on then.
It's dumb, but I'm right.
It is dumb that you're right. That's a good point.
But I get to be correct, so that's all that matters. The one player that I think I probably see a more natural fantasy scorer from, priced in a similar bracket, albeit about 140k more, is Sarah Lakai. I don't know if anyone else has looked into her, but she comes in at a discount this year, and there's certainly word that she's training as though she will be the number one ruck at West Coast. Is anyone else intrigued?
Yeah, I've been pretty excited. I was very surprised to hear that Ali Drennan said that Puddles, Sarah Lakai, is the player to watch this preseason. I think I've always been a fan just on the basis that she's one of the stronger rucks out there. Really, has a really big impact on the contest. Her tackling is phenomenal, and her work at stoppage I really like. One of the parts that I was a little bit worried about was her, more around the ground work. But apparently that's exactly what Ali was wanting to talk up this year was, her running's been phenomenal and her marking has been phenomenal. So to me, that creates quite an all-round game that I'm really hoping comes together for her. The big
I think
concern,
she's a good
I suppose,
choice. Oh,
no, you go.
I was going to say, I think like player, position, team, all of that is putting Sarah Lakai as a good choice. To me, it's just a price bracket. That is not that I've made a team yet. I know Liam's made 100 iterations, but I'm yet to actually sit down and make one. But in my mental map, it's just a tricky. Yeah, I'm just not sure if I see the upside there, and I don't know if I want Sarah Lakai as a set and forget. Another one in this bucket that's interesting to consider is our Gold Coast interviewee for season 9, Lauren Bella. Very experienced. I can't recall off the top of my head what she's priced at. Anyone?
I'm looking it up.
Yeah, I don't have it open.
Okay.
Lauren Bella's priced at just under 50.
She's 644k.
Yeah. I mean, she's an interesting choice, I think, because she's a known quantity. I would say that she is fairly consistent at that price. I don't know if there's a lot of upside value necessarily, but because she's been in that role for quite a while, she knows what she's doing. She also ended the season on a career high. So if she can kind of, for hit outs, if she can kind of bring that increase to her hit out game into this season, maybe there's a little bit of upside there, but I think she's just one that's quite steady at that bracket. What do you guys reckon?
Yeah, I think Lauren Bella's a player that we probably would hope would be getting a bit more involved in the play. So I think for Gold Coast to take that next step, she probably needs to. Whether that does happen and whether I'm willing to take the punt on it at that sort of price, I'm not sure.
Well, if we don't have any additional thoughts on these guys, let's move over to our fantastic rookie options. Oh, damn it, I closed my list. I was going to say we've got a handful of players, maybe 8 or so, that are coming in at basement price up until kind of that high draft pick price. But there's only really a couple that we think are worth considering here, which is definitely a change from last season. Will, why don't you start us off with the interesting option over at Geelong?
Yeah, Lily Pearce is a very interesting one. Comes over from Richmond. We talked in the Geelong episode that there's not a whole lot of genuine rucks on Geelong's list, so it makes sense for Geelong to be playing Lily Pearce alongside Kate Darby. So I would expect her to probably get game time. I'm not sure how her scoring will be. We're not really sure what that ruck split is going to be just yet. But if she is playing, you've got a bottom price ruck who will be able to make you some money.
I would say that we do actually have some sense of what she'll be like. And funnily enough, in terms of stat build, she's very similar to the player that she's replacing in Erin Hoare. She's someone who was on Richmond's list last year, so she's still not played an AFLW game, though. She played half a season in the VFLW this most recent season before she replaced Erin Hoare as a replacement player at Geelong. She was playing for Collingwood's VFLW side, where she averaged 32.8 hit-outs per game. She only averaged 6.2 disposals per game, and her fantasy average was 62. So she's not exactly a high possession ruck yet. She's seen as someone who comes in with a lot of athleticism, but probably still pretty raw. She's pretty tall as well. I think she's 185 and 186 centimetres. And for the most ridiculous stat line that I have seen in almost my entire bit of preseason research, she had her season high in the VFLW in round 1 against the Southern Saints. She had 4 disposals, 38 hit-outs, and 12 tackles for 92 fantasy points. That is insane.
12 tackles.
I can't remember the last time I saw anything over 90 with only 4 disposals. So she's definitely not going to be a high disposal player. I think that's probably the reason that I don't love starting with her on field, because I think we saw last year trying to start with Erin Hoare on field meant that you got a lot of 40s, where it was ended up being Matilda Schultz, who also basement priced, came in with a lot more fanfare about her high potential, but also the skills that she was arriving with around the ground.
I think I agree with not starting her on my field, but imagine if she could just lift that up to 10 disposals a game. You know, we could be looking at 120 averaging player here. It's incredible.
Yeah, sure. That's a reasonable expectation.
I think that's the logical option. I can't see it not happening. So
yeah, it's the only way it could play out. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, the other option that we've got then instead is Eilish O'Dowd at GWS.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to this one. As much as she is a bit of a utility, she comes across Aisling Maloney's style as a very athletic, taller player who's played Gaelic football. She's 25 years old. She's come in very hot in the VFLW season that GWS has played. So she had a few games where she was sole primary ruck. She averaged 13 hit-outs per game. She averaged 60 fantasy points, but I would say most importantly, in that only her third game of AFLW or Aussie rules ever, she managed to get the third highest number of coaches' votes in that game, which speaks to a coaching staff that clearly rates what she's doing. I would not be shocked that if we were talking about Cambridge McCormick earlier and who's going to back up Fleur Davis, I think that Eilish O'Dowd's quite evident natural talent and the fact that she's already shown the capability to ruck makes her a highly likely player who will start for GWS this year. The only query I have is there is another ruck on the list. So is Courtney Murphy, who was actually a very popular player last year as our ruck loop toward of the year, but she was at Brisbane, comes across as a former basketballer, and also spent time in the ruck in the VFL this year, albeit didn't show as much as O'Dowd. I just wanted to throw that out there because I do think that I'm concerned about Fleur Davis's time in the ruck because she hasn't necessarily shown that talent, and I think that O'Dowd clearly showed something very early on.
Are there any other rucks that anyone's got their eye on?
No, I think we've done a pretty exhaustive list there. I think there's a lot of interesting options, but kind of to what we were saying before, it's probably the first year that we aren't really set on the rookie ruck strategy. It's been our strategy going back for the last few seasons because there's been a lot of options. I think this is probably the year to pay up if you think that you can't find the value, because we don't have great rookie ruck options. We probably don't have any fieldable rookie ruck options this year. I think you're probably going to have to spend up to at least one of those sort of mid-ish price players like a Montana McKinnon if you want to, start with some points in your ruck line.
Yeah. It's a scary prospect. I haven't put together my team yet, but I know I'm going to have to... I feel like I'm going to almost build my team around if I'm going primo or mid-priced ruck, because we don't just have that lovely rookie default option waiting there for us. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Well, this has been our ruck review series episode. Yeah. This has been our ruck review episode. Hopefully you've left this with more answers than you have questions about what you're going to do with your rucks for your starting squad and throughout the season. Jump on over to AFLWFantasy.afl to put your team together now, because the game is open and ready for you. In terms of the rest of our preseason content, you can have a look at our club review episodes out on our Spotify. We've got all of our best 21s to go with those episodes out on socials, so that's Insta and Twitter. And you can find us at FreeKickWPod across those. And if you want to listen to some of our other preseason episodes, we're also on the AFLW official fantasy Insta feed, Spotify feed, and you can go to our new YouTube channel, which is FreeKickWPod, where we've got the audio and just a nice simple logo attached to it for all of our preseason episodes, if that's where you like to listen to your podcasts. And while you're there, please subscribe, like, comment, do all the good things, because we've just started it. It's very new, but it does have our full back catalogue, so you can go nuts on 97 old episodes of fantasy if you like. Well, I've been Mel. You guys have been you guys. Chat to you next time.
We continue to be, despite our best efforts.
I would continue to try to be me. It's
Bye.
hard.